Quinshon Judkins will be better in 2023, even though his numbers might not be that way. Also, it is July. We are going to give you our official Locked On predictions of the Ole Miss football schedule starting today with the Mercer Bears. So stay tuned for that.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. Please subscribe there. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, or more importantly, Ole Miss every day. Am I right? Also, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. It's the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Hi, I'm Stephen Willis, and this is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. And for the first part of July, we kind of have a pretty jam-packed show for everybody today. The main thing that we want to talk about is Quinshon Judkins. And we expect Quinshon Judkins is going to be a better running back than he was last year. And he currently is probably the best running back in college football. But whenever you look at what Quinshon Judkins did last year, you can see that he rushed for nearly 1,600 yards. Nearly 1,000 of those yards were after contact. He forced nearly 100 missed tackles. He had a fantastic year. But we expect those numbers rushing to go down. And there's several factors that could cause that to happen. If you look at this is a chart of where he ran the most and how many yards he got rushing in different areas. There's a key up at the top. You can check that out as well. The main thing is he was mainly a middle-of-the-field runner. He did a really good job running in the middle of the field, and that's because his lateral movement and his tackle breaking and all that were pretty elite. I mean, he's an elite running back for a reason. But the main thing that we put up here that we wanted to do is the attempts. You see, he ran the ball 275 times last year. That's a lot, and he can handle it. He absolutely can handle it, but he wore down a little bit at the end of last season. And a lot of factors played into that. Namely, Zach Evans kept getting hurt at inopportune times, forcing the workload for Quinshon to go up. And Ulysses Bentley IV broke his wrist at some point during the season and never really fully came back. So what started as a three-man rotation at the beginning of the year, by the end of the year was basically Quinshon, and that was it. I expect that 275 number. I think they're still going to run the ball a good bit with him. But I'm expecting that to be somewhere closer to 200, 225 carries-wise. So if you could see a situation where Quinshon Judkins could be more effective, you can see where he might get 1,100, 1,200 yards and be really good doing it because of the health of the players behind him. Now, another factor that could pertain to his running ability could be his receiving. He caught a touchdown pass against Auburn last year, had a pretty good year, but if you look at his zones and his receptions, he was pretty good catching the ball out of the backfield, but he only had 15 catches. And I expect that number to go up quite a bit. Now, we've talked about Jackson Dart and his struggles in the middle of the field and tried ways to try and make him more effective and to accelerate his development and all of that stuff. Well, one of the ways you can do that is by throwing the ball to the running back. And with Ulysses Bentley IV, who was an excellent receiver of the ball, especially downfield, we saw that in the spring game. Quinshon Judkins and an excellent natural catcher of the football as well. You can see where they might start to get used in the pass game a little bit more. You might see a little bit more flare passes, a little bit more option routes, some screen type stuff, and you can put these bigger bodies that I expect 12 personnel to be used quite a bit kind of out in front of him, where you have Caden Priestcorn and Michael Trigg blocking downfield on a flare pass to Quinshon Judkins, which in any world, that's a matchup advantage for Ole Miss, no matter who they're playing. They could be playing Georgia. That is a situation that Ole Miss would like. Quinshon Judkins in the open field with 2 tight ends blocking, that's going to put them in pretty good shape. So we will see. Those are 2 main factors to where I think Quinshon Judkins could be dominant. He could be the best running back in college football, but his numbers could slip from last season. And that is, I'll say it again, the carries I think are going to go down because I think the health is going to be better. They were a little bit snake bit at running back, but this year with Kedrick, Reescano, and Ullyses Bentley, I expect them to be a little bit more durable at the running back position. And also the pass game, I think that is going to be opened up a little bit more as well. I am a big fan also, if they could keep them healthy, to see a little 20 personnel at time to time, maybe some 21 personnel. I do want to see some 2 backs on the field at the same time. I think Bentley and Judkins can really complement each other really well, and you will see where Quinshon Judkins kind of becomes more of a dude because of the threat of the different stylistically running the football. Remember, 2020 and 2021, the 3 running backs, Snoop Connor, Jerry and Ely, Henry Parrish Jr., were the 3 running backs. All of them were effective. They were under Kevin Smith, so he sent them in and out of the game quite frequently. So we'll see how that happens stylistically when there's a different running back coach in charge of the substitution patterns of the running backs. It'll be really interesting to see. I think Kevin Smith does a really good job at running back for Ole Miss. I just do. And should be quite interesting. Anyway, when we come up in just a little bit, we're going to talk about William Echoles, and we're going to break down his highlights from the defensive side of the ball. Stick around for that. And also W's and L's. We debuted that. It is July. We're going to start to look at the Ole Miss schedule and tell you exactly what we think is going to happen and what you need to look for as well. Just want to let you know, you can take your first swing at betting MLB at FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets, up to $200. That's right, I said that, up to $200. That's right, just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bet, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from money line to over-under to who you think is going to hit the first home run. All in an app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. Now, I realize that Mississippi is a brick-and-mortar casino state, and you have to go to a casino to sports gamble. But if you go to Louisiana, if you go to Tennessee, you can use the FanDuel Sportsbook. It's super safe, secure, and super easy to use. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get $200 back in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, it's an official partner of Major League Baseball. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. Every dayers tomorrow on the show, we're hoping for John Wayne Oliver. That is what we're trying to do. It's all scheduled up. The interview still needs to be recorded, but we're hoping to get that as well. We have talked to Brian Smith. He has broken down the film a little bit. He's given us his opinion. We will talk a little bit about John Wayne Oliver and an offensive lineman at Ole Miss. I'm pretty fired up about that. But over the weekend, Ole Miss received a commitment from William Echoles from Houston, Mississippi. Really, really good football player. He just is. There's no way you can really get around that. He's 6'4", 290 pounds. Defensive line-wise, it is said that he came up at Ole Miss in camp for Randall Joyner, and his workout was really, really good. Now, you look at the profile, every one of the profiles, without fail, rated him as an interior offensive lineman. If you rate him as an interior offensive lineman, I don't necessarily disagree with what they put out there. But if you look at him on the defensive side of the ball and some of the attributes he has, he's a little bit better than what people are letting on. And we talk all the time. Houston, Mississippi is that place that's in the middle of nowhere. And that is where Chris Jones happened. And what I mean by that is he was a low 3-star until the Mississippi-Alabama All-Star game of his senior year. He was a Mississippi State commit. Nobody knew anything about him. The Mississippi-Alabama All-Star game, he got seen. Everybody saw what was going on. He blew up and received an invite to the Under Armour All-American game. He went from low 3-star to the number 2 or number 3 player in the country in the span of about a month. It's just, it is what it is, honestly, when it comes to recruiting in Mississippi. It just happens. Mississippi is a difficult place to recruit. Now, if you look at his highlights, he does really well moving side to side. He tackles players at the line of scrimmage or behind it if he can. He's not a person that catches running backs. And what I mean by that, whenever the running back constantly falls forward, you don't necessarily see that with him. His work is done laterally and at the line of scrimmage and behind it. Really good player, decent agility, and he does what he needs to do. He makes plays. Now, I realized, I said this in the reaction video yesterday. In Mississippi high school football, there's games where he's just going to be going up against a 215-pound offensive lineman. We all remember that in Mississippi high school football. It happens. There's that thing where, I played in the state championship game, and our right or left tackle, who was just a dude, I mean, he never had a chance of playing college football, lined up against Morris Scott. And Morris Scott sacked our quarterback like 7 times that game, to the point where we still make jokes about the quarterback having PTSD from that game, because it was such a thing. So know that can happen in Mississippi high school football. It just can. And it will be interesting to see what he does whenever he lines up against equal or better competition. Maybe see him in the Mississippi-Alabama All-Star game. If he goes to a extra All-Star game, I want to see what he does there. But if you look at his high school film defensively, he uses his hands really well. Good pad level. He's good at the point of attack. He doesn't give ground. He does all the things that you want a defensive lineman to do. And his agility and all that, I think, is a surprise. And he has a chance to really burst on the scene. He just really burst on the scene. And you will see that let's see. It may have been on 3. I forget who said it, okay? Don't hold me to this. But maybe it was Rivals, maybe it was on 3, maybe it was 24/7. I don't know which one it necessarily was, and I'm not trying to play favorites, but I'm telling you, this camp workout they had was unbelievable. And a lot of people are not going to agree with it. A lot of people are going to look at the stars and the initial rating, and they're going to make a decision, and they're going to have a take, and they're going to defend it forever. We talk about that all the time. You can't really do that with William Echoles in this situation. He has a guy that has a chance to be fairly special at the next level, and is somebody we need to keep an eye on. If you told me that 1 3-star out of Ole Miss's class that they signed, Pops, has a Evan Ingram or Mike Hilton type role, it's this kid, I think. He's a really, really good defensive player. Anyway, just is what it is, all right? When we come back, we are going to start our W's and L's and looking at the Ole Miss football schedule for 2023. And we start with the Mercer Bears. Yes, it's an FCS program, but hey, FCS programs deserve love too. FCS programs deserve love too. Stick around. Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. Subscribe there. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, or more importantly, Ole Miss every day. Hi, I'm Stephen Willis, and this is your 2023 Ole Miss football schedule preview. We're going to go through game by game, and this is going to lead us up until media days. We're going to do a game a day during the weekdays, and that'll get us through most of July. So I'm pretty fired up about that as well. So the Mercer Bears is a decent football team. Yes, I know they're an FCS program, and Ole Miss should win this game. There's not a world where Ole Miss should not win this game. That world does not exist. If Ole Miss loses this game, it's a disaster. But Mercer is a decent football team. You look at them on the Opta stats, they have them ranked as a preseason top 25 team in at number 24. So a good FCS team, not quite the Big Sky Conference area schools where North Dakota State, South Dakota State, Montana State, all those really good football programs that exist, but they are a good football team. Now, the number one player for the Mercer Bears will be Ty James. He's a wide receiver, 6 foot 200. His preseason grade is just a priority free agent. But whenever you read that before you poo-poo whenever's going on, that's exactly what Malik Heath is doing right now. Okay? So if Malik Heath is good enough to do that, if this is a Malik Heath level wide receiver, it's somebody to pay attention to. James has a 20.7 receiving average on 108 career catches, had 351 receiving yards against Samford, ranking as the 4th highest total ever in an FCS game. Mercer lost that game to Samford, by the way, like 50-44 in double overtime. Josh Buchanan says he has been a consistent big play threat for the last 3 years, but really opened up a lot of eyes in the second half of last season. This is somebody we're going to have to pay attention to, period. Also, in Phil Steele, I don't know the name. I can't find it. When I was trying to look it up, there was a player that was a punt returner that made one of the NFL draft prospects at the punt returner position. So there's somebody else to keep an eye on as well. This is a team that has a chance to be pretty decent. They have explosive players on the outside. They're going to want to throw the football. Now, if you look at exactly what they did, they play actually the week before Ole Miss. Ole Miss is going to open with them, but they are opening week 0 against North Alabama in the FCS kickoff game in Montgomery. Now, they will be tuned in, and now you've heard many times, no team, no player makes the most improvement than they do from game 1 to game 2. That jump is higher than any other jump they're going to make. So it'll be interesting to see. But UNA into Ole Miss, that's kind of a jump as well. If you look at what they did last year, they ran for nearly 200 yards a game, threw for nearly 300 yards a game. Probably about 460 yards was their total offense average. Defensively, they only gave up 120 yards rushing and 216 passing. Decent defense, about 350 yards per game. And if you look at the ESPN FPI matchup predictor, Ole Miss has a 99% chance of winning that game. Just to remember, in a probability situation, there is no 100% chance of winning that game. That's as high as it can go. So ESPN, everybody says there's no world where Ole Miss should lose this football game, period. Good players. Mercer's probably going to be a pretty good test. They are going to be more practiced than Ole Miss at this point, going into a second game when Ole Miss is doing their opener. But they should put in a little bit of a test, and they might give Ole Miss some problems in that game, especially early on. Now, I expect Ole Miss to win that game by 30 or 40 points. I just do. I expect Walker Howard to be able to play football in that game. I expect Austin Simmons to be able to play football in that game. I expect Quinshon Judkins to not play in the second half. This is what I'm talking about for that game. I'm expecting them to be explosive. And I want and demand them to be explosive in games like this, because this is the dirty little secret that nobody's going to tell you about going into this. If Ole Miss drops this game, much like Jacksonville State, it's over. This is a game you can't lose, period. There is no excuse for it. You lose this game, it's terrible. That's the reason it's a 99% chance of winning on the ESPN FBI. Ole Miss ranked inside the top 25, though, in FBS. That trumps somebody ranked inside the top 25 in FCS. There's a scholarship gap of about 25 players. You're going to have good players. There's always NFL players that come out of FCS programs. There just aren't enough of them. So I think the tempo and the explosiveness, this is a perfect game for Jackson Dart to start honing in on his middle of the field thing and making plays. Not necessarily force the ball, but I do want him to consistently emphasize that area. Because if he can get confidence against Mercer and carry that into Tulane and carry that into Georgia Tech, by the time he's ready to go to Tuscaloosa in Alabama, he's going to be ready to go and be able to play this game. So a lot of what I'm going to be talking about is about that progression. And this is a perfect game for Ole Miss to develop that progression. This is a game that Ole Miss should win 52-7. And that this isn't a slight towards who they're playing. It just is what it is. This is a game that's going to pay for Mercer's athletic budget this year. It just is. They call it a rental win for a reason. Like I said, it's a 99% chance on ESPN's FBI that Ole Miss wins this game. And the only reason it's 99 is because they don't do 100. If Ole Miss loses this game, it's a huge red flag and problem, especially for a coach that makes $9 million a year, period. But really, really big game for Ole Miss. I'm ready for it to start. We want it to get to 4,000 subscribers on YouTube before the Mercer game. We're going to get there before August. So now we're looking at 41 or 4,200 by Mercer is where we're moving those goalposts for. You guys are doing a fantastic job. You guys really are doing a fantastic job. Anyway, I do want to say, if you guys see my mother in Vicksburg, Mississippi, today's her birthday. Wish her a happy birthday. And tell her that everything's going to be great and we're great to have her around for another year. Thanks, Mom, for everything. You're fantastic. Everybody else, enjoy the 4th and have a safe weekend with that. All right. So this is the last thing we're going to do. Here it is, the schedule preview. We're going to keep a track of the W's and L's. All right. So we're going to build this every day and go through and put the W's and L's on there. Whenever we're done, we're going to put the total record that we're predicting out to the right. We're going to obviously start with Mercer and a W. Tomorrow we will do Tulane at Tulane. The next day, Georgia Tech. And honestly, if we do this right, it's going to take us into media days. We're going to do standalone videos to where you can see exactly what's going on with these prediction videos. And you can kind of draw back to them as well. So you can see what matters, who matters, how it matters, why it matters, and the prediction of it. So we're going to do that as well. Should be a lot of fun. And once we move to the FBS stuff, we'll have a little bit more subject matter. It was kind of hard to find Mercer Bears stuff online. But once we go at Tulane and at Georgia Tech and stuff like that, we should be able to go pretty well. The one we're looking at potentially having struggles with will be the ULM game from this point on. So it should be pretty good as well. Remember, tomorrow, if technology doesn't get us, it's all scheduled and everything, John Wayne Oliver going to talk about what's going on. I'm going to mention on the Locked On Ole Miss podcast tomorrow morning kind of a breakdown on what's going on with him. I've talked to Brian Smith. He's given me his initial breakdown of this player. So we'll talk about that a little bit. He couldn't do a video on it, but he did an initial breakdown. So we'll have that tomorrow as well. I do want to thank everybody for tuning in today. And thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. So subscribe there. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Every dayers. Tomorrow, again, John Wayne Oliver, hopefully, if technology doesn't get us as we continue to grow out our July lineup at the moment. So that should be a lot of fun as well. So thank you very much for tuning in. Have a safe and happy 4th of July, and we'll see you tomorrow. Hotty toddy.